Hello and welcome to the School of Humankind. What is it, the 16th of January? I think this is the second event of the year so far. We are back. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking to one of the core co-founders, the co-founders of School of Humankind. Some people will know him as an educator, a musician, a painter, a writer, a performer, a coach, a mentor, a sometime Halloween lighthouse keeper, and co-founder of the School of Humankind. It is my great pleasure to be talking to John Britton today. How are you, John?
I'm very good, thank you. And I particularly would like to discuss Halloween lighthouse keeping, please.
Do you want to start with that, or can I ask you two questions to
Yeah, we
to
can we can
kick us
come on
off?
to that later, maybe.
I've got obviously you've we've known each other for a few years, and I am part of School of Humankind because of you. Um, but I've got two quick questions to kick us off. There's lots to talk about, but in that list, what is missing?
The things that are, yes, thinker.
Okay.
Uh, for a long time, I've loved the fact that the Europeans use the word intelligentsia. Uh, it doesn't
Not
mean
all
you're
Europeans.
not no, but it's accepted as a sort of designation of a sort of person. It has nothing to do with your level of education or your qualifications or your class or your income. It's somebody who chooses to engage the world with the world through thought and often through art. I remember going to jazz concerts in Portugal when I was working there, and it was, there were the whole spectrum, social spectrum, uh, right from political activists through to the workers who'd come from the factory, through to people from the drama music school where I was working, intellectuals, whatever. And the person I was with said, "Yeah, it's the intelligentsia who are out." I mean, they think they're smart. It's a designation of people
Mm.
who engage with the world unafraid of ideas and thinking. And I've
Great.
always felt myself attracted to that designation. So intelligentsia, or thinker as an easier word,
Yeah.
uh, nature boy. There's a lovely song, Nature Boy.
It's got a slightly different ring to it than intelligentsia, but yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
but
Nature
but
boy.
but also one of my big things at the moment is exploring the understanding of intelligence and understanding that the idea that intelligence is to do with the mind is a very Western, post-ancient Greek Western philosophical journey, and that there are other intelligences which are absolutely the nature boy intelligence and the
Yeah.
interpersonal intelligence. So nature boy, I mean, and I suppose creative. It's a nice broad
Okay.
term, but
Yeah.
everything that I'm interested in is creation, boundary smashing, transgression, uh, radical, as in from the Latin root, which means root, to go to the roots of things. Don't
Mm.
accept things as they are, but go to the roots and say, nah, I want this plant to be different. I'm going to have to change the roots. Plant something
Interesting.
different. So,
Yeah. Because you've sort of preempted my second question I wanted to ask, which is of all those things, the things I mentioned, and then thinker, nature boy, creative, intelligentsia, radical, um, what's the through line? What's the thing about you that makes all of those things necessary? But you may already have touched on it.
mm, probably it's creativity.
Yeah.
I think what links absolutely everything is a fascination with the creation of something from nothing. It's fascinating in myself, as a writer and a painter. And when I was a performer, I was an improvising performer for many years. I would go out on stage with no idea what I was doing and create a show from nowhere and come off going, I have absolutely no idea where that came from. But I was also obsessed with ensemble, what happens between people. how people create things that neither of them or none of them know that they are capable of creating, and yet somehow spontaneously, with no planning, they all create. I'm fascinated by how nature creates endless change, endlessly adapting to circumstances with a phenomenal creativity. So creativity I mean, we many of us maybe despair of humanity at times, but human creativity, particularly, alongside natural creativity, nature's creativity, human creativity is just awe-inspiring. Whether it's a great book or a cathedral or a painting or a child's ability to invent a game with a cardboard box, it is just stunning what
Mm.
human creativity does. And that's my lifelong obsession.
Interesting. And so when does that first appear for you?
We don't name it as such when it appears. I was always, as far as I can remember, awkward, nonconformist, bit weird, strange. I liked different things before I knew that liking different things was either a stupid thing to do or a pretentious thing to do. I mean, the first album, people say, "What was your first album?" The first album I ever bought, it's kind of funny. First album I ever bought was an album called Les Oiseaux Exotiques by Olivier Messiaen, who was an experimental 20th century French composer who transcribed birdsong into piano music. Still a composer I love. I discovered many years later, deeply religious composer and one who had been in the concentration camps, wrote an amazing piece of music called The Quartet for the End of Time, which was premiered in a concentration camp by the prisoners. Extraordinary man. I didn't know any of that. My first album was experimental 20th century, mid 20th century classical music.
And how does that happen? Because my first album was a Whitesnake album.
How did that happen?
Would be an equal question, but how does something like that happen? What's because I've never. This is the first time I've heard of this person, but it's the
Yeah.
first album you ever bought.
It happened because, well, my parents were culturally hungry, by which I mean they both came from backgrounds where culture was not available to them. And they were both damaged but deeply cultured people. My father was a scientist. Was actually a brilliant scientist who ran away from his brilliance and became actually a brilliant teacher in a very mediocre school for the whole of his life. But when he was young, he wrote poetry. When he was during the war, he spent scarce money on buying, uh, pamphlets of T.S. Eliot's poems that were being released around then, the four quartet poems. I've still got those pamphlets. Uh, my mother left home at 14, left school, and then was thrown out of home at 14, scarcely able to read and write, and built a life for herself. I mean, she was tough and she was difficult, but she built a life for herself and was so hungry for culture. She read and she, devoured poetry when she could and loved music, opera particularly. That was given to me, even though I didn't have their struggle, that culture was really damn important. And it wasn't, they didn't like Messiaen and whatever. What they gave me was curiosity. And what my
Mm.
curiosity gave me was jazz and, well, initially experimental 20th century music, and then it expanded outwards because I heard stuff and I went, I'm not allowed to like this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I was going to also ask you, you spoke about um, you were a bit weird, nonconformist. How do you retain that? Because my experience of most people is we're all weird,
Mm.
but we conform to be safe. And then you meet people who haven't. and never did. I'm fascinated by what enabled you to stay truer to who you really are.
I didn't.
Interesting.
I didn't. Uh, or at least I have spent decades of my life in a warfare between an urgent desire to conform and the fact that I feel personally unable to conform. Uh, I was bullied badly at school. I was sent off to the same mediocre public school that my father taught at, which was a boarding school. I was bullied badly at school. That taught me to shut my mouth and not be weird.
Mm.
It's a sporty school with muscular Christianity and all of that stuff where rugby mattered, and I liked singing and drama and
Jazz.
jazz, yeah, and 20th century music. It doesn't go well, mate. It doesn't go well.
Yeah.
And then I went on and I spent 30 years as an artist in a continual struggle between desperately wanting acceptance and therefore making all sorts of compromises to be accepted and really feeling that I did not fit in that world. Uh, and there were great things in that. I carved my own path and so on, but there was a cost to that, and there was a lot of costs, but some of the costs ended up in a heart attack at the age of 55
No.
and a complete burnout and breakdown. Um, Now, in a much gentler way, I have decided to stop apologizing.
Mm. It's really interesting because you are someone who, from my own experience, you have this passion and kind of power and drive, and the way you talk about um, radicals and these people coming together to discuss ideas that break things and or
Mm.
things that we might all benefit from being broken. There is this power and almost this, not aggression is the wrong word, but you've chosen to use the word a gentler approach to no longer apologizing.
Mm.
How true is that? Where's the is that kind of firebrand passion? I don't even know what I'm trying to ask. I wonder whether there's still that kind of outward desire to break stuff, but actually it's you're just not going to say sorry if you do.
Yes, there is. There is a greater desire. There's still an ongoing desire to break things, a greater desire. People say you become more conservative as you get older. I don't. I become more and more radical as I get older politically.
Mm.
Um, there's a huge desire to break things. There is an absolute, unflinching belief in the importance of human and natural creativity, way more than there used to be. Uh, I, I'm at the point in my life where I think it is the thing that will save humanity from extinction. And I really mean that. That being able to reconnect with our ability to imagine differently and to imagine together and to imagine with the world instead of imagine how to dominate the world. I'm more convinced about that than I've ever been in my life. What I am gentler with is I don't really care anymore who agrees with me. I don't anymore, it's difficult to acknowledge that this has been a driver for me, but it has. I wanted to be important. I
Mm.
wanted to be a person who was at the vanguard of change. I wanted people to go, yes, he's the sort of person, bit of a hero in there. He's a hero of new ways of doing things. And that's not healthy. It's not healthy to want to be a leader like that. It wasn't healthy for me anyway. Maybe it is for some
Yeah.
people. I no longer want that. If people, as some people do, read the things I write or come to me for, coaching and mentoring and find it transformative, one, I'm very glad. And two, I know it's relatively little to do with me. It's because they are ready for that transformation, and I happen to be the vehicle they chose for it.
Mm.
that gentler thing is about going, stop claiming so much and stop wanting so much, and just focus on what good can I do with the skills that I have in a world that I think is damaged, but many others don't. I don't have to convince other people. I'll just talk about what I see. And I hope that for some people that's resonant. So there's a lack of desire to be a hero anymore. And I think that
Mm.
desire was there unhealthily for a long time.
Yeah, interesting. It puts me in mind of the kind of Che Guevara t-shirts in student union bars and stuff like that. That kind of
I used to
rebel,
wear them,
tear it
mate. I used to
down.
wear them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you also said that your I wonder where you spoke about um, the importance of creativity, human and natural creativity as the solution to our survival, almost the thing that will keep us. And then you mentioned that the old version of you, this improviser who would go onto stage with nothing and come off with a show, and then this new version of you that is gentler. I made half a note, which is always a problem when you make half a note on what somebody says. But I wonder on that kind of. Oh, you said your thinking had changed. That's what it was. You said your
Mm.
thinking had developed. And where's the difference in that thinking, though? Because that younger version of you, ready to be terrified as you step onto stage and trusting that creativity will come. Presumably, that version of you also believed that human creativity had this incredible
Mm.
power.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. The my own creativity has changed only in as much as the way that I, you know, explore it and communicate it has changed. Uh, I don't perform anymore. Uh, there's nobody to perform for. I live next door neighbour has sheep. I've got sheep and cows and horses around here,
Tough
and
crowd as well.
they're lovely, but their attention spans are short. So
Yeah.
there again, so many humans nowadays. So
Yeah. Big fans
um,
of TikTok, I've heard.
absolutely, um, I still have that, or train myself in that creative fearlessness, but in some ways, if you're not performing live, the outcomes are slightly less scary. On the floor just behind me there's a reasonably large abstract painting I'm trying to do, and it still involves just going, I think it's this color. I think I'm going to put something there. And then you look at it and go, or you go, oh, yeah. It's the same thing, but there's nobody else watching me as I do it. I think what has changed in thinking is when you perform, I go out there, there's people turn up for an event. I go out there to perform. I improvise over maybe a 30, 40 minute journey, and then it's over. A product is created. And, it's amazing. I used to love watching improvisation, and I used to really love performing. Oh, I loved performing. Because as a product, increasingly my thinking, my way of seeing the world distrusts more and more the idea of outcomes
Mm.
and answers and solutions. That I think everything is process, and that my creativity now is a process. And at a certain point, I will stop a painting. Doesn't mean it's finished, it means I've stopped. A coaching journey, I know you go on LinkedIn and you're meant to promise you'll get these 10 outcomes, then people give you some money
Yeah.
and you end up affluent. And I can't do that with any integrity. I
Yeah.
don't know what people will find in a coaching journey. I know they will find stuff, and I know they will find what they're ready to find. And I know I can help them go steps further than they could go without me or someone like me. But I don't know what that will be.
Mm.
It's a process. So my what's changed is this increasing distrust of myself as the instigator of the as you know I'm the one with the answers, I'm the one who can create the outcome, I have the solutions. And it feels very much because the more I know, and I do read a lot, and I think a lot,
Mm.
the more I read and think, the more I realize how pitiably little I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel
It's
so overwhelmingly ignorant in the face just of human knowledge, let
mm.
alone all the other knowledges in the world.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's because there is, as you were saying, that version of you much younger who wanted to be the hero. Well, heroes are created through visions people buy into and
Mm,
promises people make, maybe. I don't know. Um, and it is a very humbling point in life when you have that realization that, oh, I don't know anything really.
mm,
And actually, the more we embrace that idea of uncertainty being the only certainty, it suddenly becomes very difficult to make the promises that we're surrounded by.
yeah. There's a disconnection between the systems that we have to work in and the reality that we're working with.
Yeah.
The systems say you have to sell a product. The reality, which I love, is that there is only process. I
Mm.
mean, the thing that hasn't changed in my creativity is that what I loved about improvising wasn't actually people at the end saying you're brilliant, you're amazing. That was always lovely, but not really very interesting to. I mean, it's nice, but it's nothing.
Yeah.
What I loved about improvising was that extraordinary sense in the maelstrom of a performance where I've just got this clarity in my head of saying, pick up this piece of material, don't follow there. This quiet sense that it's not a voice because there's no words. It's just a sense of saying, slow down, change direction. Oh, that links to this. That thing you said 15 minutes ago, say it again now, it'll make a link. You're losing them. Go closer to the audience. Yeah, all of the that's what I loved, the unfolding creative process. We live in a place of, or a system of selling product. That's why love conversation. I mean, School of Humankind is a wonderful place because we are having these conversations. For me, it is. And what I'm fascinated by is, you know, you're asking me things that are making me go, oh, that's interesting, whatever. It's a process. It's an unfolding process. It's not a selling job. I mean, I
Mm.
wish I was better at selling things, make my life a lot easier. But there's the truth.
Yeah.
It's all process, and that for me is not a bad thing. It's a glorious thing.
So with all the things that you do, the kind of create, because there's creativity in all of them. Um, all the things you do have a creative avenue or come from that place of
Mm,
unfolding creative process. I know with your coaching that this is really an area you're, like you said, your thinking is evolving in this area and you're more certain than ever about human and natural creativity. How is that now impacting the work you're doing and the way you work with people? And I know we're not talking about outcomes,
mm,
and yet people come to work with coaches because they're looking for outcomes.
yeah.
They're looking for change. How is all of this feeding into the work you're doing?
The one of the things that's I've always known as a lot of my work in performance was training and teaching people. I was a director and performer, but I was also a lot of work training people and so on, running workshops. And I've always known that ideas and words should reinforce practice, not replace it. there's a way of teaching where people go, "Oh, I'll tell you the ideas, and when we'll do a bit of acting to so that you understand the ideas." In other words, that the practice, the practical work, the experience is somehow just confirming the concepts. It's not right. Concepts should be a foundation. Words should be a foundation that make an experience richer. So, when I would be teaching, I would introduce some ideas and then we wouldn't talk that much. We would do stuff and the ideas would then somehow appear through the work people were doing. So
Hmm.
I'm a great believer. I mean, I argue when I train people to teach, which I have also done quite a lot of, or people talk about experiential learning. All learning is experiential. There's no other way of learning. But
Yeah.
sometimes people's experience of learning is sitting in a stuffy room while somebody drones on and on and on. That's still an experience. It's just a bloody boring one.
Yeah.
So all learning is experiential. And I've known this for decades. It's been the heart of my work as a trainer and teacher. Yet my coaching has often been online conversation. And
Hmm.
that's really rich. It's very very powerful. You do this as well, I know, Wyndham, and it's
Mm.
very powerful for people. But of late, I've just wanted to know what happens if we integrate something more experiential into that, more directly experiential. So I'm now working with a package which I've only just launched, uh, where I'll talk for 10 minutes at the beginning of the session, have a conversation, just to introduce an idea, not to come to any great answers, but just introduce an idea. And then we will actually do a 15-minute creative process together. And things are negotiable with any client. But what I'm really interested in is week one, we'll do some writing.
Hmm.
Week two, we'll do some drawing. Week three, we'll do some moving. Week four, we'll do some deep listening to music and interacting with music. So that even if you want to be a writer, you go, well, I'm really interested in writing. You have to look at your creativity in places where you're uncomfortable.
Mm.
And then after that, we will have some feedback session where I'll ask people to feedback on their own work because one of the greatest blocks to people's creativity is their own self-talk.
Yeah.
So we will learn to be kinder in our feedback to ourselves, and then we'll have a coaching conversation. But
It's fascinating. Sorry to interrupt. It's fascinating that whole kind of the self-talk thing. Because as you were listing those things, I was thinking writing, yeah, no problem. Comfort zone. Let's do some of that.
yeah,
And then when you're talking about movement, yeah, okay, used to be into that. I
yeah.
could probably tap into that. Music, I like listening, but I don't know. And painting is like, "Ugh, I am not an artist. Is
And
is the voice in my head?
and it's fantastic, isn't it? Because at exactly that point, you have confused creativity with product creation.
Yeah,
And that's absolutely what we do. I am not you, me. I
yeah,
start on a painting and I go, oh, this one's not going to sell. Ah, wrong thing to be saying.
yeah.
The creativity that you must call on when you've got a blank piece of paper and a felt tip follows the same principles and encounters the same blockages as the creativity you have to call on when you're trying to fill a piece of paper with words. The creativity is what happens if I try something? How might that develop? How can I quiet my mind and allow some intuition to come in? How can I observe that and then add to it? How can I choose to take a risk? How do I respond to a mistake? How do I quieten the voices of failure? And then when it's all finished, go, how can I look at that? How can I see in that everything that's of value? And how can I, without some form of self-condemnation, look at everything that is not satisfying to me and say, what choices might I make next time, which might be different? In other words, how can you learn from every creative process, whether it's successful or not? Now, those principles would happen across any kind of creativity.
Mm.
I go to a writing group on once a month. Last night, my partner set up a writing group over, in the local community centre. And although I write a lot, I write sort of non-fiction and so on. It's really interesting to go, oh, I'm going to just write stuff that I would never normally write. And all the voices come. Oh, you
Mm.
crap, you don't know what you're doing. So that's it. That's the real heart of the coaching journey because, we end up for each session with a maybe 20, 25-minute coaching conversation, but it's based on something very real.
Yeah.
It's I was drawing and I heard a voice in my head say this. Good. Okay. That's real. That's not an idea. That's an experience.
Mm.
And that's really where my thinking is increasingly at the moment. How can the experience of creativity, how can we draw out the lessons for ourselves? Because creativity teaches us about ourselves and about the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
How can we, in a gentle, kind, and really developmental way, draw out the lessons of our own creativity? And I know one of the things I'm really good at, one of the things I was always good at as a teacher and trainer is creating the space and the permission for people to draw out their own lessons. That's, I know, one of my strengths as a
Mm.
teacher and a coach. So that's sort of where my work is at the moment, trying to and to do stuff online because it's private for people. It's very private creativity.
Yeah. It's so interesting because this new approach, not a new approach you have, but this new package that
Mm.
you're working with. Um, it's interesting because when I first spoke to you about it, and it listening to you talk about it, was like, okay, so this is for people who um want to be more. So this is my thinking rather than what,
Mhm.
what you actually said. My thinking was this is for people who want to be more connected to their artistic temperament, artistic in inverted commas, temperament. And listening to you speak there, I'm having a much deeper and better understanding of actually what it's for. How does what you do for your client or with your clients transpose into their day-to-day life?
At every level. That's the thing. Some of them go, well, I want to write, so I work with them and they end up writing. Some of them
Mm,
say, I don't like my career, I want to work as an artist, so they move towards working as an artist. That's all super cool. But some of them go, well, you know, I'm a parent and I want, can you go, I'm a parent. This is a new programs. These aren't people I've particularly worked with, but
yeah.
these are people in the past I've worked with who go, well, I'm a parent and I'm stressed because I used to be an artist or I used to draw and paint and I don't anymore. And we create space and they become a better parent because they're simply more aligned and less stressed. Uh, some of them go off and use, their confidence in their creativity within community or activism. They serve their wider community in different ways. It works at every level because our creativity, which is our imagination, our ability to actually create something from nothing but possibility, to carve a reality out of potential. Our creativity is perhaps the the core human attribute.
I was just thinking there are no uncreative kids.
No, absolutely not. It's what innate. I've a fascinating book. I've actually just written an article for an online magazine, which is going through the editing process at the moment, where I trace the role of the performer back to Neolithic ages. The art that remains from the Neolithic age is suggests how priests and shamans created cosmologies, religions, ways of seeing the world through the sharing of stories. That they would go into their dreams and they would see things in their dreams, sometimes aided by hallucinogenics in various forms and so on. There are pictures which are almost certainly magic mushrooms in the heart of Newgrange in Southern Ireland, down
Mm,
south from me, which is as old as the Egyptian pyramids. It's an amazing place, older than the Egyptian pyramids. And there's pictures which are almost certainly of hallucinogenic mushrooms there. So they would go into these places, into the depths of the human mind, and they would come back with stories, and people would go, this is explaining the world. Our ability to create is what makes us human. So when I say that the access to our creativity works at every level, it works at the level of just getting us through the day, but it works at the level of reconnecting ourselves with the core of our humanity, which is also around compassion, around connectedness, around kindness, around individualism. It's not all sort of out there. It's about saying, what is my unique vision? What is my unique voice? And how do I communicate my unique voice to someone else? Because all creativity is about making something which you share. Even if you don't share it, in your head, you share it. You're
Mm.
always, even if you put your poems in a drawer somewhere, there's always someone reading them, even if it's only your vision of yourself 6 months from now. Creativity is humanity. And this is the passion that I will not let go of, whatever the
Yeah,
world throws at us.
yeah, it's fascinating because what's coming to my mind are also things you spoke about, um, kind of giving into the flow of your improvisational creativity. And for me, what's coming up is it's so it deeply connects me to acceptance and surrender. And
Mhm.
you use the word I think you said discomfort or uncomfortable, the uncomfortableness of letting go and being in the flow and trusting into these things and being open to try things to bring something from what appears to be empty potential into whatever it actually is. It,
Mhm.
it's it's really putting me in mind of our lives are an ongoing creative process, and the stories we tell ourselves limit what we feel can be created. And it
Mhm.
feels like actually tapping into real, tangible, traditional thoughts of creativity can only benefit and help those other areas in our lives where actually a bit of creative thinking would go a long way. I work with a lot of people who, there are 2 points on the spectrum of any of their problems. One is do nothing, and the other one is burn it down. That was me for such a long time
Yeah.
because we can't see the steps, the other potential steps we could take.
Mm.
Whereas really tapping into our creativity on any level gives us that opportunity to look at things in a different way.
Mm. For me, it's unarguable, and it is modeled by, for example, actors in the creative process. An actor walks in, let's say in a conventional creative process, I'm going in and I'm playing Hamlet. There is no right way to play Hamlet. I can't possibly go, well, what's the right way to play Hamlet? The voice inside my head might go, you're doing this wrong. There's a few technical things, like I have to get the words in the right order. But everything beyond that, there is no right nor wrong. There is only the life we create, Hamlet's life we create. It's there in every gesture, in every breath, in every intonation. It's different every time you perform it, a little bit,
Mm.
maybe very different, depends on what sort of performer you are, but it's always a little different. There is no right. It's not that, there's beginning and end. It's not that there's right and wrong. There is only choice. But
Yeah,
it's not my choice. It is my choice in connection with others. It is
yeah,
my choice in connection with what others are choosing and how my choices empower them and their choices empower me and what Shakespeare chose. And then in performance, it's the choices of the audience. I always used to be fascinated back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s when I would be touring more conventional performances. Friday night audiences were different to Saturday night audiences. I can't remember how it went now. I think Friday night audiences were always quieter and more serious.
Mm.
because they come in from a day's work, but there was serious theatre people, so they would go out to theatre. Saturday were more out for, what are we going to do this weekend? Let's go to see a show. You do the same show on Friday and Saturday, and Friday, the choices of the audience would tend to bring the show a little bit quieter, a little bit, more focused. Saturday, you'd go a little bit bigger and ride the laughs a bit more.
Mm.
None of these choices are our choices alone, yet they are all choices that we must each make. And that for me
It's
seems like a model of creativity.
yeah, it's fascinating. It puts me in mind of I saw Bryan Cranston
Uh-huh.
speaking to whatever school of acting in the US, and he was giving advice on the audition process, and he was saying your job is not to get the part. Your job is to present your version
Mm.
for other people to consider whether it fits their vision. And it's that it's stuck with me because it resonates for me in life in every area of our lives. It's I am not trying to earn your that I saw somebody else talk about the tyranny of being chosen. This idea in our heads that it's like, oh, but I want them to pick me. I want them to think well of me. I want them to do this. Flipping that to, I'm just going to give you the best version I can of me, and this is what I truly believe. This is me, tapped into and expressed. And you then have a choice, and your choice is yours, not mine. I make my choice to tap into my creativity, to trust the inner flow, the way I want to be, and then you hand it to everybody else to deal with as they want. And some people are going to like it, some people aren't. But
Mhm.
judging myself on their reaction is entirely unhelpful.
Always fatal to judge yourself on other people's reactions. It's
Yeah.
useful information. If I make a painting and nobody is interested in it, that's useful information. If I say I am a bad painter because nobody is interested in my painting, that's a useless judgment.
Mm.
It might mean I need to change what I'm doing if I want to sell something. It might mean there are clearly things lacking from other people's perspectives. Do I want to do something about that? So all criticism and all whatever is useful information, but we must always remember that whether other people choose you or not says something about them, not about you.
Yeah. A
Other
100%.
other people's opinions are their business. They hurt like hell.
Mm.
They can sting like a knife going into your guts, but they are other people's business, not your
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I'm conscious of our time, but I wanted to talk to you about the School of Humankind
Ah.
because there's something that has been created from nothing between you and Angela.
Mhm.
Talk to me about the where did that come from? What was the so where did it come from and what's the point? What's the ambition?
The come from was a long genesis, about 2 year genesis that actually started with me and another guy, and then various people came in and out, and Angela came in early in the process, and uh, the original ideas were all over the place in different places. It really didn't formalize into any kind of direction until Angela and a couple of other people were on board, and then people dropped off, they got busy, they went off in other places. And as we came towards launch, Andrew and I sort of found that we were the only ones running it. Holy shit, what do we do now? Um, and it was kind of, oh, we seem to have an organization and we've got lots of plans, and plans are great, but we got to deliver.
Mm.
So it's been an improvisation. It's been flying by the seat of the pants and so on. And
Yeah.
very much driven by the sense of the most important thing to do is not get everything right, but get stuff out there and learn as we go along.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the first 6 months, we've done 50 or something community events, free events, and so on.
Which is
God,
pretty amazing just on a numbers basis.
it's extraordinary,
Yeah.
extraordinary what we've done. Uh, we've got 12 people, 10 people, 11 people on faculty from all over the world. Really fascinating, great people on faculty. And the things that we're not succeeding at the moment. And so we're working on those. You know, Angela and I work on them, and then, you know, you and I and the rest of the faculty, we all get together and we got big plans and so on. Now, what's the point? Well, the origin, thinking origin, was way back in the day when I went to university in the 80s. I went to Hull University in the 80s, and Hull was a campus university. I was there just before the age of Thatcher screwed things up. In fact, we occupied the boiler house and closed the university down in my third year because they'd appointed a Thatcherite vice chancellor who was trying to cut all the courses. We're not going to let you do it. And we caused the socialist revolution, which lasted at least 20 minutes until everyone got cold, and then we went home again.
Very good. You got to start somewhere, right?
You've got to start somewhere, absolutely. The boiler house was a toasty place to start.
Thought it would be the right place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, until they closed the boilers down, bastards. Anyway, it was a campus university, and what I meant was, you know, I would go down to I would go, what's happening tonight? I don't know, go down to campus. And you'd end up in the bar with someone, or there'd be a show on, or there'd be a lecture on, or you just meet someone and then you go off into town to the pub. But it was a hub, it was a place. And I was an English student. I had friends in the English department, a lot of friends in the drama department where I spent most of my time. But, you know, my closest friend was the chemist and so on. It was a place where we hung out. A lot of it in the bar, you know, it was a social life and so on, around politics and so on. I worked at a university in the early 20s, 20,000s, whatever you call them. And they're not like that anymore.
Mm.
Students go in for 8 hours a week and spend probably 16 hours a week, you know, working a checkout at a supermarket or doing something else. The notion of collegiality and of conversation has gone. And I think that we have lost something terrible when we lost that, not just in universities, but in social media and all of the rest of it. The ability to hang out and meet people outside of your echo chambers and your comfort zone. Community is not about hanging out with people you like. A healthy community is finding ways to live together with all sorts of people, some of whom you like, some of whom you don't, some of whom you agree with, some of whom you don't. That's what community is.
Yeah.
So School of Humankind, in my vision, was always about trying to create a space where people could come and hang out and have conversations and meet people and have real stimulation, discover ways of looking at the world that they had not thought of before. Go, oh, you know, Angela's an engineer, you know, Angela, my co-founder, she's an engineer, amazing, you know, fantastic conversations which come out of an engineering place. That's interesting to me. You know, you're the blueprint coach, and then so we talk about things. Our work is often in some ways quite connected. But then Anne, she's a parenting coach. I don't have kids, but what she talks about is fascinating.
Mm.
So I want that place where we can have intelligent conversations across boundaries and where people can come and learn real, good, useful knowledge. Stuff that will make, just like, you know, how does creativity work? I want it to make a difference to you today, and I want it to change your life.
Mm.
So I want people to come to School of Humankind and attend something and go, wow, that was a damn good use of 45 minutes of my time because it's really helped me. And also, I want it gradually to transform people's lives over time.
Amazing.
That's my vision of it, and it's a work in progress. We're growing, and Angela and I have, you know, amazing person to work with. We have ongoing conversations about what we're trying to do and how to deliver it, and so on. It's a big plan.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly from my perspective, I love the concept. I love the people. I love the method of execution. I think there is enormous potential. One of the things I always talk about now, because I never used to do it, is actively try to find the common ground, actively try to find the kernel of information that I can
Mm.
bridge to, regardless of who it is, regardless of what they're saying. And that's one of the reasons I was so attracted to School of Humankind is that, like you say, everybody's got a different background, everybody lives in a different part of the world. It would be very easy to fall into our little echo chambers and dismiss. I don't have kids either, so it would be very easy to just not be that interested in what Anna's doing. But that's not the point. Life is wonderful when we're curious about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very exciting prospect for the year. Um, Coming towards the end of our chat, um, where can people find you? What's the best
Uh,
way? And you've also were telling me earlier about your extensive publishing oeuvre. Where
uh,
can people find you? What
I
can they
published a new
expect
book
from you?
today. It's so
Yay!
exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
It's
But
now
you weren't going to
actually,
say anything, which is
I
it
know,
is
because
exciting, but we then don't do anything about we
I
don't.
know, and that's why I really should be a marketer of my own work, but I failed to do so.
Well,
And
you
it's
are
not,
now.
well, okay, so let me market. Um, the easiest way to connect is to go to my website, which is www.johnbritton.co, not com. Everyone goes com and they go, your email didn't go through. Uh, johnbritton.co. You can find out about coaching there. You can find out about my creative soul work, which is the experiential coaching. There's a page there on my books and publications and so on and so forth. Everything's really there. And you can contact me through there, or you can email me at john@johnbritton.co, not com.co.
Yeah, so what's your autofills? Just in case they
Yeah.
try to add an M or a .uk.
Do you mean it does it all the time? Do you mean com? No, I don't. And stop being helpful. The last thing we need is helpful technology.
Indeed. Um, John, thank you so much. It's always interesting talking to you. Um, I hope everybody who has watched it is here today and is watching online finds that really interesting. Is there anything else you would like to add before I attempt to remember how we end these?
No, only thank you. It was a really lovely conversation. You guided that really beautifully. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for turning up today, for watching. You can catch the replay of this on our YouTube channel, School of Humankind. Please head across to our website, which is schoolofhumankind.com. There is an M on that one.
Hmm.
Please sign up for our newsletter. John, certainly at the moment, is curating a monthly, or is it bi-weekly? Can't remember.
Fortnightly. Yeah, fortnightly.
Fortnightly newsletter where there is always something interesting from one of the faculty. It will also list all the events that are coming up. We are still in the process of populating the calendar for the next couple of months. However, now that everybody is back in the swing of 2025, I would imagine that will fill up very quickly. So please keep paying attention. Follow us on LinkedIn. Share any of these conversations with anybody you think may find them useful. We really do have big plans for School of Humankind, and the more people we reach, the better. But other than that, I wish you all a peaceful and joyful few days, and I, or certainly somebody from School of Humankind, will speak to you again soon. Take care. Thank you, John.